I think correctly. Oh yeah.
With a hand mic.
I want to link to that mic because mine's wearing out, and I like the ear clip on that one. Just the mic. I have the stuff.
Yeah. Oh, that's what I'm saying. The ear clip. Hello.
Welcome.
Thou shalt be quiet.
Welcome to the afternoon panel where you get to ask us anything. Anything.
It doesn't mean we'll answer. It doesn't mean we'll answer
And
you,
apparently,
but yes.
the way we're going to do this, because there's not a mic out there right now, is you're going to yell it. We're going to repeat the question, unless somebody figures out how to get a mic out there. But I was going to start with a question for everybody on the panel to answer. You guys all have a homestead of some sort, right? What's one thing, looking back, that you would do differently? Because you know now what you did not know then.
I would not have swelled that area over there. I'm glad I did because I learned a lot from it. But this land has no battery for water, no matter how much you infiltrate. And I would have went with more of like a 30 tree arrangement using the drip style irrigation that's in my garden. I'm glad I did it because I learned a ton from it. But if I wanted it to be productive, that's what I would have done.
I only recently started using heavy machinery, like an excavator and a skid steer, and I feel downright foolish that I hadn't done it already because it is so powerful. I have literally dug thousands of feet worth of swale on many properties, and now that I realize what I should have done, I could have been way more dramatic. I would have looked like I was Zach Weiss or someone like doing amazing things, instead of just someone with a shovel. And I would have saved my back. And it's not hard. And you find someone who's like local, who's willing to rent it to you for like each item for $200 a day. 2 items, you get a bit older son. They want to operate the heavy machinery. It is wild. I put in 2 large ponds in 4.5 days in a giant swale and a smaller swale that still would have taken me over a week to dig. All the work all put together would have taken me by hand years to do. And I did it in 4.5 days. And I did it the week before my son turned 18. And it was like the sweetest thing ever. I don't know why I didn't do it before, but it's going to be something I'm going to be doing from now on. So that's what I would say.
What I would do differently is what I encourage a lot of people to do differently. I let them learn from my mistakes. And that is, don't get livestock of any kind because it's a really good deal that you're not going to be able to pass up when you don't have the infrastructure for them. Get the infrastructure squared away first. All of it, so not just half of it. Oh, like
tell us the story.
Which one?
His brother. What about what your brother did because you didn't have all the infrastructure set up?
Oh, which time?
You lost all your huckleberry or blueberry.
Oh yeah.
The goats ate it.
Yeah, I mean, just
because they're goats.
Yeah, if you don't have good fencing set up, in the entirety of your system, and someone doesn't understand the complexity that you added to things because you cheaped out because you need a little bit extra paddock, and the extra paddock is not to the same fencing standard as the first one, and somebody lets the goats into the second paddock where you didn't want them, and the fence wasn't ready, and the goats all get out and eat $1,200 worth of blueberry bushes. Yeah. That's a bad day. I mean, the same things can be said for housing for animals. You have a great deal on, a couple dozen chickens that someone just wants to practically give them away to you. $50 for 2 dozen, 1.5-year-old hens. And the
solution becomes a problem.
Yeah, the solution becomes a problem. And if you don't have the infrastructure, don't bite on it. you talk to the person to say, hey, could you wait an extra week so I can hammer this out? Those are some of the biggest takeaways.
I would have answered this question so much differently a year ago, but I've been on my homestead 17 years now. And when you go into homesteading, you are so excited to get your gardens in and get the chickens and, change the earthworks and make housing and chicken tractors. Like, do you know how many chicken tractors I've burned in place because I made them too heavy? That's a totally different story, though. But that's the fun part. That's why I'm getting into it and preserving the food and all of the fun. Where I did not put focus was my zone 0, my house. And had I just held my horses and gotten that lined out, all of the things that needed to be fixed, set up in a way where one thing flows to another thing, which it needs to do in your home as well as on your property, I would have had somewhere at the end of the day where I could go after a hard day and decompress. I would have had a place where when I had a big harvest, the harvest didn't get in the way of everything else in the household, because in a homestead like mine, the kitchen is sort of the center, right? Well, if you're also preserving all that food, sometimes you need another little secondary area where you make that happen so you can also still cook dinner, for example. And it would have made me act faster on all of the other projects that have happened outside since then to have that. So that's what I would have done differently. And now you all get to ask questions.
I have one. This is for Matt. I have blister beetles, squash vine borer, and squash bug. How do you combat that?
So, first of all, I would always have, to prove that you're improving things, leave the plants that get eaten by that, and it will improve things. But I'd also at the same time grow Tromboncino, Rampicante, these, and it's the butternut family. They have such hard, dense stems that the borers don't get in there. And so they're really immune to almost everything because they've got such essentially tight cells. They're really tightly put together. And start there. And they also last well into winter. So if you're doing Rampicante, you're still getting fruit off of it right now. I am. And in Utah at this, like right before the frosts, I was filming someone years ago and they had it growing like all over their front lawn. It had grown out of the garden and just rampant. So Rampicante, right? But that is going to be immune to almost everything. And then there's two things you can do. If you already have a problem, feeding the plant and trying to shore up the holes in the plant is doable, but it's slower than being preemptive. So you got to kind of attack the actual bug or insect or predator when it's in the middle of an attack, right? So I would say gather those insects. Do you know what IMO is? So if you take rice and you put it in a fertile area, it'll grow rice mold on it. And you want it to be white and fluffy. It can be a little yellow, can be a little orange, but white and fluffy is rice mold. But you grow that rice mold. But if you grew that rice mold with those beetles and those insects in it, the rice mold will be trained to eat that. And then you could mix that with water and spray it on the bugs, and they literally get killed because they turn into covered with white mycelium and they're just digested. So that's a straight on attack. But the inverse of that is to help the plant. And the reason that these borers are getting in there, the reason that these fungal blights are breaking through the cell walls has to do with minerals. And so with fungal blights, they're breaking through the calcium, silicon, and boron matrix that is the cell wall. And so if you do water salt, all right, how many people see insects attack their stuff when it gets super humid in August? You want to know why? Well, it's because it becomes so hot and humid that the calcium transport shuts down. So that's why people are doing water soluble calcium in the tropical regions and being like, I love this, because it allows them to keep all the blights off in that critical time period where calcium transport shuts down. This is also why people are doing the horsetail EM mixture. Michael Phillips, the natural orchardist, he's doing that for integrity of the skin to protect it from fungal attack. And then the other issue is nitrates. And all of this goes back to the plant having the right minerals available to finish photosynthesis properly. And if it can do that, it can protect itself against all of those pests. So they need the right amounts of minerals to protect themselves against pests. For the higher levels of nutrients and nutrition and secondary metabolites, that's all biologically based. And you can't get there until you take care of the minerals first. It's in my regenerative soil book, and it's based off of all the research that John Kemp has been doing this whole time. John Kemp has his own personal database. All those farmers with all those large tracts of land that he's helping, they're all the success stories. He has all their data. So he's been able to prove all these things out. He has also he links it all to published from Good Scientists published data. So, and he has all the testing now too. So John Kemp's plant health pyramid is in there. The elements are in there. You'll be able to match it out and fill in the gaps. And once you do that, the plants literally become immune.
I feel like I missed part of that. I was trying really hard. I started at the squash vine board and went to other shit. Tell me again how the minerals will protect from squash vine board.
Do you have okay. So if you don't have the ability to change nitrate into amino acids and then into proteins, you start building up. And if it goes past 24 hours and the day begins again, you start getting this momentum in the wrong direction. Same thing with simple sugars. If you don't turn them into polysaccharides within the 24-hour cycle, the sun comes up. And so nitrates, when nitrates are high in a plant, it literally leaks out of them and sends a signal to plants from kilometers away. Insects. Yeah, and they come and feed on that and they suck it out of it because the plant literally it's overwhelmed. And it's sending the signal out to compost it, to kill it. And so that's why you need minerals to finish the nitrogen cycle inside the plant. You need minerals to finish the sugar transformation from photosynthesis. If you check out my book, if someone has my book, if you go to the section where there's the pyramid, it's about halfway through it. You can open it to there, and it'll literally tell you the minerals that are key for them. There's like 4 for each stage, for the lower stage and the next stage. It's all in there.
So, like the military explanation that's straight to just the point with a knife hand, no matter what those deficiencies are, if that plant is deficient in minerals, this won't tell you what minerals, but if you take a refractometer and you take a Brix reading on the leaf, not the fruit, the leaf, once you're over about a 9 to 10 on the Brix, nothing will touch your shit. And what he's explaining to you is just that the reason that particular plant has low Brix is because it's deficient in those minerals. There's other reasons that could happen, but it's once you get that level up in that plant, insects don't want to eat it anymore. It's that simple. I'm a little skeptical on the squash vine borer thing. The devil. So here's my way to do the squash vine borer thing now and grow regular zucchini. Y'all just saw my bioreactors. What I figured out is you can make them, and you got to age that compost about a year, but you can grow in after about 5 months. So plant your zucchinis in your bioreactor and throw a net on the top of it and fuck the squash vine borers. They can't get in there. And if you're going to get high Brix in a zucchini plant, putting it in that directly in just that compost, that will probably do it.
But I definitely don't have those problems, and I haven't had them for years. Everywhere I've lived in Washington, Missouri, Northern California, Southern California, Texas, I've never had those problems because my plants are healthy. And that's the thing is, like, if your plants are healthy, there's a reason plants are still here. The insects didn't win one year. The majority of the plants grow and they make it all the way through, and they've got dips in their health. Like when it's too hot that day or too dry, or there's water logging. Those dips in their regular cycle those are the moments where they can be attacked. But overall, they are resilient to these things.
I have an off the wall question since does anybody have a question? Oh, Eric has a question.
Jack, for AI generated images, what software are you currently using? And is there any other ones that we should potentially look at if we're interested in that?
So what Eric's asking me is, what software am I currently using for AI generation? Technically, I'm using DALL-E, but I'm actually using ChatGPT, which simplifies the whole thing because you tell ChatGPT what you want and it sends the prompt to DALL-E. And I use that the most, but not only. I also use, God, I can't, the names escape me right, Midjourney. And that works through Discord. And I have prompts that I develop for that there. And the reason I like having two is sometimes what you ask for, it's like that one thing you ask that one AI unit for to do. It's like completely tarded. It can't figure it out. It has no idea. Like when I did a show, I don't remember who it was. I had somebody on about rabbits. And I said I wanted rabbit hutches in a garden. And it looked like a rabbit gulag. And the hutches were all stacked weird, and the rabbits were in there looking like they were in a cage, like a kennel you take a dog to the vet with. And there were also rabbits eating all the fucking garden. There were rabbits everywhere. There's rabbits on the roof of the house. So after trying to talk to this thing for like 5 minutes and yelling at my screen like I do, I just went over to Midjourney and then came up with my own prompt, and I got a much better result. You can also ask ChatGPT to write those image prompts for you. But we could also use it to find out things about soils and stuff like that. And again, you can use one AIT to write prompts for another AI tool, and it actually improves your results. So that's just a little bonus there for you.
Chad, what do you got?
Curious about the next big homesteading, nerdy tech thing that you guys aren't doing today, but you're excited about it tomorrow. I don't know what that is, but I'm sure you guys have some ideas.
Okay, so the question is, what's the next nerdy homesteading thing that you're excited about, Nick?
The big thing I'm excited about, I am not going to talk about on the air.
Oh dear.
Oh. Can you mute us?
Lame.
I'd just like to say something to the live stream audience. This is why you get your ticket, because every so often we have to mute.
I think the thing that I'm most excited about, I think it goes back to the excavator. I had so much fun putting in ponds.
Yeah, they're fun.
It is so much fun, and I'm telling you, it's not hard. If you guys have been doing swales and you know what flat is, you can do this without like all the fanciful like I put in like a swale just eyeballing it. I've been doing it for years, but I just eyeballed it, and it's like, I don't know, like 50 yards. It's pretty wide and pretty long, and it's all flat. So I loved using the machine.
Okay, so I have two things.
Okay.
The first one is I'm fascinated by the work that Alan Booker and Billy Bond are doing to decontaminate the soil in North Carolina through biology. And I'm not even sure how I can help or how I'm going to help, but I am going to help. And they're using compost tea to start with to set the stage to be able to get those chemicals out of the riverbank so people can use it again. And I suspect it will work way faster than any other method that is traditionally used. So particularly the timing of that with the potential for how the administration is changing how we are going to approach the FDA, the USDA, and farms in this country, if that really comes to fruition with Massey and Joel Salatin and anybody who might be being interviewed to help them with things and to make more of a regenerative farming effort, the timing is perfect. So that's my like nerdy, exciting part where I'm probably just going to learn more from those guys than actually do any innovating at all.
You're making me want to change my answer.
Yeah, I am. But the other thing is, I think a very undervalued thing is how to integrate permaculture practices inside your home. And that I know that just sounds like a lady homemaker thing, and it is. But like even organizing your stupid kitchen in zones is completely revolutionary in how it works, right? And having that integration from growing the herbs all the way into your kitchen that makes sense, and then you grab the things that you use the most. Yeah, I've got a chef applauding me right now. So, but throughout the home, because it's your center, and so that's exciting to me, but maybe not anybody else. Yeah, Zone Zero Design. That's going to be my new company name, I guess.
That's awesome. Awesome name. So number one, I just want to say it took Matt a long fucking time to realize that like using a backhoe or an excavator was a good idea. So don't make your swells with your eyeballs. Invest in a laser level. They make real, I mean, ones that 20 years ago were $3,000 you can get for $500 now. And I don't mean like they made a shitty version of it. I mean, like they're at least that good. It's you can rent them too, right? Like don't go buying some $600 thing you can rent for $100 if you're going to use it for like one layout and done. And I would also say on that one, if you're part of a community like she is, where you got a lot of people around you doing stuff like this, you don't use a laser level every day unless you're going out doing jobs every day for other people. So that's a very good community asset that can be circulated around. And, you know, if everybody put in $50 and you had 12 families, you got a laser level. As far as what I'm excited about, as far as my next project is my class on biochar. And every time I build one of these classes, I'm like, well, this is going to be like a 4-hour class. And that was the compost class. And that turned into 8-hour classes. I built out the syllabus. And then I did the cover crop course. I'm like, that'll be really easy. That'll be a 4-hour class. That's 12. As I'm building out the syllabus on the biochar, I think it's going to be about 20 hours, which means it's probably going to be 25. And everything I pull back on that just explodes and gets bigger. And there's this other thing. And I'm checking down, what is the history of man using fire in agriculture other than burning shit down to grow shit, right? Like to actually think about it. It's like not just a way to get rid of material, but how do I actually incorporate this? And I'm finding examples of this from thousands of years ago all over the world. I mean, all over the freaking world in places where we're like, oh, look how wonderful this soil is. It just must be blessed. And it turns out that some ancient people were using fire in that system. And in some instances, we think they know they knew what they were doing as far as how it was actually making things better. In other places, it was just to get rid of things. And they noticed things like in a lot of the Midwest, these natives were burning the grass every year. And they did it because when you burn grass and it's perennial, it grows back really fast and really tender and really delicious. And then the buffalo come and eat it and then they shit. But that's why that soil is so amazing. That's why there's 12 foot of freaking topsoil in some parts of the Midwest. And yet we had 12 foot of topsoil and they screwed it. There's places where we've lost 6 of the 12 feet in the last 70 years. It's absolutely insane. We can use these processes. And what's exciting me is I can teach y'all how to do it at homestead scale. But I mean, you're right. If like Massey and these other people get involved at Department of Ag, this stuff works at broad scale. It was actually designed broad scale. It was to feed civilizations. And so I'm extremely excited about this. And then I turn the page into like, what's the natural fire cycle? You notice that like one of the things I love about Matt's book and some of the stuff I've learned from him is there's a cycle for fucking everything, right? You think of like the carbon cycle, but zinc has a cycle. Molybdenum has a cycle. Zinc has a cycle. Iron has a cycle. Well, fire has a cycle. And there are trees that they literally can't germinate their seed unless they're exposed to fire and smoke. Right? So the fact that we can take a natural system and actually control it, integrate it, and use it to improve what we're doing, to me, that's like, I'll geek the shit out on that like crazy. It'll probably be a biochar 2 course.
Yeah.
Do we have any online questions at this time? Okay, any other questions? We've got Diego, your hand went up first. You can be next. Diego, what do you got?
So I got about a 2-acre fruit tree orchard. I finally got rid of all the damn sandburs that are over there. Got the grass they grow. So I want to use biochar. I don't want to be, disturbing all that soil and digging it in. Can I just lay it on top? Or?
Okay, so the question is, how do I integrate biochar into an existing system where I've already taken care of the sandburs and other problems?
I would go to homefoodsystems.com and sign up for the compost course. And I would start putting, I'm actually serious, right? Because then you'll know how to make all this. And I would start making biochar, and I would compost with the biochar, and I would spread at a high, I said earlier, you can spread at like 400 pounds to an acre. And I mean, 400 pounds is a big heaped wheelbarrow. And an acre, to get your head around it, is a football field, including the end zones. So think about the fact that you can spread that much compost and have the impact. But you want to spread heavier on that. It's an orchard. It's not that big, right? So you maybe make 2 or 3 bioreactors and just spread it with the biochar. It'll integrate into the soil. Some really exciting stuff's going on in Australia, New Zealand right now. These guys are like, they're geeking out on freaking dung beetles. So they're putting the biochar into some like the extra treats. So you get grass-fed cattle, but they'll give them some hay and stuff just to get them eating the biochar with it. And then if they don't have dung beetles, they're literally importing dung beetles. So then the cow eats the biochar, okay? The dung beetle rolls up the cow shit with the biochar in it and sticks it in the ground for you. And that's really letting nature go to work. I mean, there's other things you could do. You don't have to dig it all up. You literally could go in and put it in and do the Nick Ferguson thing. Spread daikon in the winter. When all that daikon dies, go spread your biochar then. You're going to get integration down into all those holes that are left open. There's a lot of ways to do it. The other thing you can do if you really want to improve your tree, your root zone is about equal to your canopy. So go just outside of your canopy and, maybe even rent a piece of equipment, a really simple one, walk behind trencher and trench around your tree outside the drip line so you're not digging heavy into those tree roots, and then take compost biochar and fill that trench with that. And that'll do a couple things. And one of them it'll do is it's going to encourage that tree to really go. There's a bunch of ways you can do it. Those are just a few off the cuff.
Do you do ramial wood chips below your trees annually to feed them? Yeah. So if you do ramial, which is like twigs and leaves in a mix, and you mix biochar into that, that will accelerate the decomposition process and also make it more fungal. And so that's a great way to incorporate it, a great way to always be adding it and to build up. I mean, it's going to make your soil, it's going to also have, you're going to go back the next year, and if you dig into the ramial wood chips from last year, you'll find it's full of both fungi and your roots. You'll find all these roots went up into it. Yeah, it's wild. And so that's what my recommendation for you would be. Just keep it simple. Make a bunch of biochar like the way he's going to teach you, and then make your ramial wood chips like you do every year when you're trimming. You're clearing the property, making it pretty, and then you chip that up and combine the two and lay it under the trees.
So that made me think of something else too. I had the people on. So if you look up American Biochar on my site, I did a podcast with this couple. They run a biochar company, and they have developed a liquid biochar product where they've milled the biochar down enough that it's so fine you can put it through a drip system. And there's a jug of it around here somewhere. It looks like really thin tar. It's super dark black. And then it comes with instructions of how much to use per acre, diluted with water and sprayed. And they did one trial. I mean, as simple a trial as you could get. It was a park, a city park that said, yeah, you can try it. They figured it wouldn't do anything, so it wouldn't hurt anything. And basically one side of the path, just grass, and the other side of the path, just grass. They just went in and put their product on one side of the path, right? 3 years later, the grass on that side of the path was, this tall when they were at peak drought. And then the other side looked shitty like it always did. And they just used that liquid product. They did one application with that, and they got that result. Because what it did is it seeped into the ground, it opened the pathways. And when they were like, well, what exactly is going on? All it was is the roots were deeper. So they took core samples, and the roots on the shitty side could only get down about 6 inches. So unlike here where you got rock, they had enough dirt that if you get down deep enough, you're in a reservoir of moisture. Well, the plants on the other side had 2 to 2.5 foot deep roots, and that was the only thing they did was put down that material.
Yeah, I was gonna say, a lot of people think your biochar has to be in big chunks. That there's apps. You saw the electron scanning microscope picture of what that stuff looks like at the nanometer scale. There's absolutely no reason why we can't pulverize this stuff and still be effective. So, I mean, if we're talking about a small, how big did you say it was? About 2 acres. You could put it through a leaf shredder a handful of times and kind of powderize it like that. You're going to make a bunch of dust. I've done that. Yep. Wear a mask. I've done that with a handful of mist emitters right at the very bottom of it. And that mist coming out really helps to knock down a bunch of the dust and just almost fluidize it right there on the spot. You can always make sure it's damp and cover it in, lay it out on a tarp, just like an inch or two thick. Cover it again with the tarp. You can use cheap moving blankets and then drive over it numerous times. You're going to crush it and crush it and crush it. Just keep driving over it back and forth, back and forth. And you can take that material, mix it in with your leaves or ramial wood chips are the best to put in a Johnson Sioux bioreactor, in my opinion. And then you mix that the biochar in there with that, let it just sit for a whole year. And then when you fluidize that in your paint strainer bag, anything that was too big to fit through it, it's not going on the ground. And you just dribble that over your 2 acre orchard. It's not going to look any different. If like you was saying, if you're putting out mulch, just pulverize the stuff, add it to your mulch, and just rock and roll.
Just if you're going to use a leaf chipper, there's a formula for this. I figured it out. It's 48 hours after you quench. It'll go right through a leaf chipper and it won't make any smoke. If you do it right after you quench, you'll turn your wood chipper into a tar reservoir. It's disgusting, and you end up turning it upside down and spraying out with a hose and saying a lot of curse words. If you wait like 3 or 4 days after you quench, you get a lot of black smoke, like Nick was saying. But if you put it through there at 48 hours, bro, it comes out. It just comes out perfect. And the only thing I do to clean my wood chipper out after I do that is I get like a bucket of wood chips and run the wood chips in there to help clear it out. Because if you don't do, I've learned this too. If you don't do that, the next time you start it up, it makes a really big black cloud.
Black clouds are bad.
Yeah, it does say biochar, you can eat it, but it does not go in your lungs. You do not ever want dry biochar. Never. You hear of the coal miner's illness. My grandfather had it called black lung. 30 years after he hadn't been in a coal mine, sometimes he would cough, and it looked like black tar that came out of his lungs. You do not want that. Trust me.
Good question.
Did you have a question first? Yeah. Shane?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What changes do each of you want to make in your businesses in the next year?
So the question is, what changes do you want to make in your businesses next year? I'm going to actually start. Because I worked with Matt Sursley of agoristaxadvice.com, who is right over there, I was forced to get all my shit into QuickBooks and be able to analyze things better. And I did an analysis of, actually with some coaching from a friend, how much of my, like what percentage of my time every year is spent on which major project. And I have 3 major projects. One is Hollow Roast, which is my craft roasting company. 2, Living Free in Tennessee, my podcast. 3, events I do like Self-Reliance Festival, those sorts of things. What I discovered was that 20% of my time roasts coffee and ships it. 60% of my time does events, and the rest is Living Free in Tennessee. 60 to 70% of my revenue comes from my coffee.
Ooh.
And they just groaned.
Pareto principle.
Yeah.
So pretty much since last May, I have been fulfilling my commitments on things I've promised to move towards spending more time on my coffee business, because having the revenue from the coffee business is important. And it allows me to do the fun stuff I like to do. So that's the big change I'm making. And that was because my word of the year was hone, which was intended for me to focus in on what's important.
I want to grow Home Food Systems. I want to 10x its revenue. And I want to do that for a selfish, non-selfish reason. About 3 years ago, the guys that had done all my tech shit for me, and not very well, but they did it, decided they didn't want to do it anymore. And I met this dude, Tom, who's here somewhere. Where you at, Tom? His shirt says Tom, 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 Tom on it, so you can't miss him. And he became just one of the most outstanding partners I've ever worked with. And I always wanted to bring him in on something, but I'm like, I can't really bring you in on like a percentage of MSB. What you're doing for that is really important, but I'd rather just pay you by the task. And I wanted to do this freaking online training for a long time. And if I'm like, I bet he would do it. And so I made a deal with him where he gets 25% of the revenue on everything we sell. And I'd like to grow that business enough that he can do whatever the fuck he wants. If he wants to keep his job, I only want him to do it because he wants to. And so I want to build that business unit to help this guy that's helped me so much get his freedom. And that's why we do this shit. Right? That's why we bring you guys in here and do this, because it's all about building up other people. You build up other people and they build you up. And if you could do that for 100 people, you got 100 people building you up. If you can do it for 1,000, you got 1,000 people building you up. You can't fail. You can't fail if you do that. So that's what I want to do this year, is build that up. It's like, I don't fucking want to follow that.
Yeah.
I want to grow trees.
Yeah. The big thing that I'm focused on in the upcoming year is
Earlier that you can't say.
yeah, kind of the thing that we were talking about earlier.
The thing with the stuff?
Yeah, the thing with the stuff.
So good.
Yeah, I'd like to about 10x what I have been doing, what I have been able to do. So
You should have gotten your tickets. So this next year, I am launching the R Soil database. It's been something that's 2 years in progress. I came up with the idea in the middle of the Kickstarter for regenerative soil microscopy, this book. And people are at this point, they're like, it's been 2 years. And it's so critical that it's done right, because it's going to change everything. To look at a soil test without knowing the actions you took and having a test before that to compare it to doesn't give you very much information. But when you can compare your actions to the results, and then when we can compare across our bioregion or across our plant type in our industry or across the pH or the nitrogen levels, all of those bandwidths are going to completely radically change everything when you can look at a peer, a leader in your bioregion and go, wow, I'm going to do those actions. I'm going to make that investment with the knowledge that I'm going to get similar results. And then you get those results. It's going to change everything if we all can see it. So the database is going to be the first of its kind so that we actually can track what actions cause what reactions and just let the tests speak for themselves rather than assuming, rather than presupposing. And what's going to come out of it is nuance. What's going to come out of it is we're going to figure out things that are going to speed everyone up. And it's also going to be self-evident. So that local farmer is going to be like, wait, you did what? Natural farming? I've been doing farming. It's natural. What are you talking about? And then they see the bricks on the local tomato ladies blowing everyone away. And they're like, why? Like, well, I do KNF. And then suddenly everyone's doing KNF. And then out of that group, someone starts doing kelp as a foliar spray. And then suddenly everyone's doing kelp as a foliar spray. And it's in this, and hopefully not too much kelp, just enough, because there's arsenic, right? Anything from the ocean is going to have arsenic, just so you know. And so having that feedback loop, having it be community-based, that's going to change my business because I'm going to be able to, for the first time, just point people to other people in their bioregion and go, well, let's look at all the different examples for your bioregion and let it speak for itself. It's like a push me, pull me kind of thing. It's like, I don't have to do anything at this point. It's like, I don't have to push you, I don't have to pull you. It has its own momentum, its own gravity. Truth does. Real science does. And so I'm just so excited for it. I'm going to be focusing all my students in soil around this. I'm going to be plugging them into it and getting them as many of them as possible, use it as much as possible so that all of us can benefit. And I'm going to be having to update my books because we're going to get new information. We're going to get nuance that all the universities are using university plots and extension center farms. Those are managed by graduate school students that I'll be doing this for a semester, but then next year, right? They don't care. And so our science is really messed up. And the people that care about their soil, care about their farm, care about their ranch land, they're the ones that are going to give you much better data because they're actually doing their best. They're not just trying to mail it in, trying to keep tenure, all that kind of stuff. So I know my business will change. I don't know how, but I'm so excited for it because I know it's going to get better. I'm going to have all this proof. I'm going to have all this more nuance. I'm going to be able to have things be self-evident. And all of our questions, you will be able to look at it and be able to see it and let it speak to us. So I know it's going to change. And I'm ready for it. I'm excited for it. So,
All right, Ken, what you got?
We talked about it yesterday. Is there a better way to control the plus or minus acidity while I'm brewing coffee? I'm having.
Okay, so the question is that one for me?
Yeah.
Okay,
Totally.
because how much do you guys know about coffee? Yeah. Okay.
Nicole makes good coffee.
So the question that Ken has is there a better way to control the acidity of coffee? And he was coming from the perspective of what pH of water do you start with?
Well, I have been using alkaline water.
Okay, so you've been using, is the problem you're solving that you're getting a tummy ache from acidic coffee?
I need it for end results for other purposes, whether curdling things or doing certain.
Oh, that's right. You want to use coffee to make cheese. Yes. So if you want that, you want a high acidity coffee. So I would not use alkaline water. I would use acidic water. I have a machine that will make 6%, like or a 6.0 pH water through electrolysis called the Kangen water machine, which is not water you should be drinking. But if you add that to coffee, I'm certain it will curdle the milk and not be a problem. Okay. But yeah, to control acidity in coffee, there's a couple things that do that. One, if you roast it darker, it typically is a lower acidity, which is counter to the narrative. Most people think the darker coffees are higher acidity, going to hurt your tummy. You may be having a different coffee reaction from acid at that point if you're having that reaction. Coffees grown at a lower altitude are typically lower acid. So if you're looking for a higher acid coffee, go to the higher altitude. Personally, I prefer the flavors of the lower acidic coffees. So I'm a pleb. It's like I drink Merlot. I like my chocolates and my caramels, and I source my Brazil bean from a lower altitude on purpose. 2 reasons. One, I do get a tummy ache from acid.
I have a hack for this.
And so, yeah, we'll give it to you next. So I source those lower altitude, and I pair it with a Colombian bean for the hollow roast. The hollow roast dark is a dark roast because I have acid stomach. So I roast it longer, and we get acidity. If you brew your coffee with so my natural water on my property is coming out at 7.8, 7.9 pH, which is an alkaline water, which is not typical. Like base is 7 for water for many people. We have limestone.
Yeah.
I get 7.9. I actually adjust that to an 8.5 for my coffee, and it brings out better flavors, which is why I don't do it for the tummy thing. I just do it because it tastes good. So that's where I control the pH of the water going in. What I will say is brewing coffee with a high acid water is going to result in a flavor that sucks. Probably. It's going to be a little too, yeah, right. He's wanting to use coffee to curdle milk to make cheese.
Yeah, it'll do
Yeah.
it when you make it more acidic.
I also want to make coffee taste good. Like that's my balance. Is every time I get it acidic, it doesn't taste as good.
Oh, it's gonna taste like shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No issue. No work
The
on it.
cheese doesn't taste good.
To be determined, right?
Okay, so we need to have some cheese experimentation.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay.
Why
And-
do you want to do this? Why do you want to do this? Just because you can?
Kind of. I'm looking at different purposes. It kind of runs into my topic for tomorrow and things that I'm trying to adapt in different techniques and how to. It's a long story. You'll hear it tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was just a topic I was just curious.
Right. So if you're adding alkaline water to acidic coffee, it's not going to curdle milk as well. That's it. Yeah. And then you're going to get the acid flavor. But if you think about how you curdle milk with acid, which would be vinegar or lemon juice in most cases, you still get that acidic flavor. And then Matt has something to talk about stomach problems.
So the tannins in tea, I like tea really strong, usually 3 bags. I cut the tannins and the bitterness with collagen. So the thing is, collagen peptides, they actually, so I started using collagen peptides to like bind up my stomach and help my like leaky gut get reversed. And then I realized that it makes everything mild. And so you literally can take out all the tannins from your tea. You can do the same thing with coffee, and it makes it so it doesn't hurt your stomach. So I do butter, collagen peptides. I don't do the MCT oil because it actually is like brings heat to my throat, and so I can't do vocally what I need to do. But collagen peptides are absolutely incredible, and I think they're not used culinarily because they're a health supplement to people. But the reality is, if you think about what people were doing in the third world to get the same collagen peptides, they're doing like horsetail, like donkey tail. They're doing all these things that are like super high in collagen for their skin, for their hair. And it's like you could make beauty-based coffee, beauty-based products that are also better for your stomach at the same time. And I just don't see anyone doing it yet. Hint, hint.
I just got elbowed by Matt Powers. Yeah.
You do?
Dorothy does.
Yeah, my wife puts scuba collagen peptides in her first coffee every day.
Yeah.
Because she's seen as a health product, right?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Do we have any online questions?
MCTs for the
Tim of the karaoke.
We'll talk about it. I know way too much.
How do you keep the collagen from clumping?
Oh, okay. So it's all timing. So if you put in the collagen when you're putting in the butter, you'll get clumping. If you put in any sweetener first, you'll get clumping and craziness. Just do with nothing, just like the fresh coffee, fresh tea, no bags. Take the bags out if it's tea, and just do the collagen and stir it up. The blue cylinder container at Costco, the collagen, I can't remember the name of it, but it's the blue package. Vital Proteins, there you go. That one dissolves really well and doesn't clump as long as you don't mix it up with anything else. It's like milk and all of it. Yeah, don't do any of that. Just put it directly in before you do all that.
Sweetener does not belong in coffee unless it's that cocktail we reverse engineered last night, which is amazing, Matt. It's amazing. Also doesn't go in microwaves.
No need for microwave.
What do you got?
Since we're talking about coffee and compost, is there any role for putting coffee grounds into compost?
Put all of your coffee grounds into your compost.
Plants
It's amazing. Like you can grow mushrooms in it. You can do all sorts of like I have coffee grounds all over the holler. They're that and rabbit poop. Like those two things grow plants. Period. End of story.
Plants love caffeine. Did you guys know that? Plants like they like good music. They like caffeine. Somehow they can see you, right? You know about this? How they like can form the shape of something that is next to it, and they don't know how it's actually seeing it. Plants are amazing. So yeah, I use it's amazing. And so coffee, I use coffee grinds in the house plants, and they freaking love it. So putting that all out there.
Yeah, all of Holler Roast's failed roasts are in my raised beds for the last 4 months. It's like, oh, another 5-gallon bucket of burned beans. Or I dropped them on the.
Biochar.
It's biochar beans. Oh yeah, you can biochar beans. 100%, and they're like little pellets. It's already done. Like all the work is done.
You biochar, not
So you're now selling that product.
Pricey. I like it.
It'll be a different brand. Next question.
Black bean.
Next question.
Black bean.
Black bean. Black bean coffee.
Anybody?
Black bean biochar.
Nicole, can you talk about what it took to install your new swimming lap thing?
So when I was doing the presentation this morning, the swim spa came up. And it was a life decision for me because a swim spa is not a cheap thing. You're starting at $20K to $50K. Okay. But I am a former competitive swimmer, and I was driving 45 minutes to a damn lap pool and 45 minutes back. And if you're running your own business, that's a lot of time in your car not doing the things you need to do. So this year I was in a pretty bad car accident, and my car was totaled, and I was not hurt. And that night I sat in my living room. AJ, who's not here, was there like supporting me through that because I was pretty emotionally wrecked from that one. And all I said was, you know, former Nicole, who had poverty mindset, would have been really pissed off that her car got totaled. And this Nicole was just happy. I didn't get hurt at all. Like I had a little bruise on my head. So I'm not sure what happened to keep me from getting as hurt as I should have been in that accident, but I was not hurt. But the result of it was I looked at financing a car. I had read the book Outlive by Peter Attia, which is all about developing mental health, physical health into old age so that you retain mobility and nutrition. And I love swimming. Like it's ridiculous how much I love swimming. Like I will do it every day, all day if I can do it every day, all day. That's my thing. And I had tried swim spas and I was like, oh, but I don't deserve $20,000. But I'll spend $50,000 on a 4Runner and finance that shit. So I bought a $6,500 truck with a friend. I have a shitty looking ass truck that works. And I financed that swim spa because I will never regret having that. So it's a buy the beans moment, right? Like I should have done it 10 years ago. So now that it is up and running, I got to learn how to pour a concrete pad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my excavator guy came out and carved out a little flat spot, and then we brought gravel in, and my neighbor came over with his tractor and his front loader, and we like made it all flat, and we built the yeah, I know. We built the forms, and then a friend of mine came down, and I said, I don't want to outsource the pouring of the concrete because that would have been another $5,000 to just pay the guy for the day. I said, teach me how to do this because I know I need to pour more concrete. And he taught me how to oversee a pour from a concrete truck, which is intimidating as fuck. Excuse me, internet people. Yeah, fuck them. And I oversaw the pour, and I have this wonderful level concrete pad with a swim spa on it. And I work out in that every day when I'm home now.
Woo! Yes.
So what's it like? I am just now learning how to get a good cardio workout in it compared to a lap pool. And I'm going to be talking to Andy McCann about some other parts. I haven't gone there yet because I just had to learn how to, and I am such a fast swimmer that I do tether myself as well in that. So it's a game changer. I should have done it a decade ago. I would be probably 40 pounds lighter right now if I had done that a decade ago. And your weight is an issue into old age too. So, yeah. So that's my answer. Bruce.
Question for Nick, or perhaps all of you. Start
This
with
last
Nick
question.
because I'm talking about the hybrid poplars that I now have that are 25 feet tall. I'll be coppicing them this winter. With that wood, would you turn it into biochar or wood chips?
I would.
Yes.
Either one of them. I would.
If I'm gonna rent a chipper, it's gonna all be wood chips.
Right. So you've got 25-foot hybrid poplars. You're going to have, a very light density wood right there. Should you make biochar or wood chips? I mean, some of that wood is going to be pretty large diameter. So you're either going to have to split it to get it through a wood chipper, or you can use that larger diameter wood as your starting fire to burn down the rest of everything. And you can use increasingly smaller diameter wood to finish off with your lightest diameter wood at the very end and end up with a relatively good even burn if you're going with like an open pit like the barrel. I think so you're in southern Louisiana. You're probably going to get the most utility long term in holding fertility in those. Those soils leach nutrients like a sieve. So you're probably going to get the most utility long term in the biochar. If you don't have mulch, if you're not able to acquire mulch, and you can just convert all that directly into mulch, and then next year start making biochar with all of the regrowth, you're going to get much higher yield out of much more uniform stock that you'll get out of those coppice trees. So that's kind of how I'd weigh it. If you're able to get mulch, then just make biochar, and this fall, this winter, whatever, experiment with making biochar with suboptimal stuff and make some biochar. And then next year, harvest that stuff again, and then you'll have more uniform stuff, and you'll have much more uniform burns.
Just to tweak the question, I've got plenty of firewood that is getting a couple years old. And
Yep.
I'm turning it into biochar. So I'm going to have plenty of biochar.
Oh. I would still biochar your bigger pieces. It's too much of a pain in the ass to wood chip. And if you're going to rent a wood chipper, like if you went one of the tow behind ones, those things are ridiculous. Like $1,500 for a couple days. So you're looking at like a smaller chipper. And he's right about the order. But like a barrel kiln like that, we carbonize stuff. I mean, I know they're 25 foot tall, but I mean, we carbonized stuff the size of my forearms yesterday, and it had no problem fully carbonizing all the way through. So those kilns like that, as simple as that, is a $15 steel barrel. We pointed the E-Take City thermal gun in the interior, and it error coded out. I thought my grandson killed it because it just not only did it error code, then it didn't work for like a minute. Like, I don't know what to do now. So yeah, you can carbonize, but I would say that's about as big as you want to go. But Nick's right; it's big material first, and I would take your biggest material and use that to make your base fire. And we can talk about that more outside if you want to. But then you use as you're adding those layers, that's where you want to use your smaller material. No. Were you here yesterday when I did the burn? Did you see the giant columns of smoke?
Yep.
That's because
It's a lot of
I
water
was
vapor.
tired and I was putting too much on, but it's also because I wanted to get rid of that material. And I had so much heat in there, I knew it would work eventually. But that material came off that hackberry tree, which apparently is also why it smelled like there was like a Cheech and Chong party here. Because apparently hackberry leaf smells exactly like cannabis. I don't know what kind of terpenes are in there, but that stuff was only 3 weeks old. My thing is, I know people say like get a moisture meter and it's got to fuck that. We don't have time for that shit. We're homesteaders. We don't all have a freaking barn like this. It can be full of material for biochar. If you would happily put it in your wood stove, it's plenty dry enough. That's how I kind of judge it.
Next question. I have one from the stream, and then we'll do Daniel.
If I want to get a head start on materials for the biochar course, should I get a 30-gallon and a 55-gallon barrel now?
Repeat the question.
So the question was, if I want to get a head start on the biochar course, should I get a 50-gallon and a 30-gallon barrel now? If you want to do a retort, you should. We were going to build one this week too, but we couldn't find a used cheap 30-gallon barrel. The 50-gallon barrels are freaking everywhere. But just for the person asking the question, anybody else thinking about taking the course, there's going to be about 30 methods of making biochar in this course. The thing about a retort that's good is you can set it and forget it. Like, it will do its thing and it will burn out and it will not turn to ash, and you don't have to monitor it. You set it up, you light it, you put the chimney on it, you walk away. But you don't get that much because it's only what you can cram in that 30-gallon barrel, and then it reduces to about a third of the volume it was, and there's a hell of a lot more airspace in there you think. So it's not 30% of 30 gallons. It's 30% of probably 20 gallons. So you don't get as much, but you can set it and forget it. That's a nice thing about it.
Is there Daniel? Okay, so Daniel just wants anybody who wants a swim spa to know you can talk to him about how to install it below ground so you don't have to climb a ladder to get in, which I currently do. Yes.
Aside from just using sulfur, what's the best method for lowering soil pH for blueberries?
So the question is, how do I lower soil pH for blueberries besides using
Humic acids. Get composted wood chips. They're going to send out their feeder roots in a layer that has the acidity that they want, and they're going to avoid the higher pH areas. Of course, I have relatively acidic soils. I generally just don't worry about it. If I'm planting in areas that have higher pH native soils, then I'll add a whole bunch of composted materials. I'll plant into that and I'll keep composting it.
So another thing you can do is just grow now, if you want to grow like 100 blueberry plants, this is not going to work. But if you want to grow like 10 blueberry plants, grow in containers. Just grow in containers. And a great way to do that and get that acidity fill that, use a big container, fill it about halfway with wood chips, like a container based hugel culture. And that works. I did great with blueberries until we moved here, and I thought I could be Mr. Badass and grow them in this soil, and that's not going to happen. They did great here until it got hot, and then it looked like somebody poured acid on them, and they just died. They just turned brown and just gone. But container, every time I've done blueberries in containers with a wood chip base, it's worked perfectly well for me.
So something you can do that's different from sulfur is you could add effective microbes, EM1, or you can make your own with like water kefir and a culture of purple non-sulfur bacteria from Algae Barn, which is PNS ProBio. And you can what that will do is when you have EM, when you brew it, it comes out at 3.5 pH. A little acidic, right? 3.5 pH. So you really can treat things and affect things. And if you are regularly brewing it, you can feed it into your drip line. Another thing is blueberries have a mycorrhizal partner that up until recently you couldn't buy very easily. But now Ericoidacea, so Ericoid mycorrhizal fungi you can buy. And so I would highly recommend buying the fungal partner to blueberries simply because that is going to provide so many, the digestive enzymes, the protons, the energy release from the fungi itself is acidifying. So treat the soil, raise the soil organic matter, like adding compost tea, that's keyed. So Johnson Sioux, that's more fungal, or a hot compost that you left for 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, something more fungal, and EM. So that's what I say.
So the question is, can we turn subtitles on when Matt talks?
The people watching on YouTube can.
That's true.
It'll fuck them up.
Ericoid mycorrhizal fungi, ERICO.
No.
I'm the English teacher you forgot.
The fucking Latin teacher.
Okay, next question.
Time for another drink?
Is it time for drink 2.0?
Yeah.
Are we going to recreate the coffee drink? Sweet. All right, guys, our next act. Is there a question?
Yeah, I think so.
Or was it just nope?
Okay.
Okay. All right, our next session is dinner. Except for at about 6 o'clock, we're going to do tell your story in 5 minutes. If you were doing Jack's stomps in the bus on the way here and your name is not up there, I'm just saying that we need to talk. So, Jack, what do you got?
So